Imagine that there's a string between your head and your gut. And the string is actually more like a cable. And this cable has data that flows back and forth from your gut to your brain, from your brain to your gut. And for some of us, this cable has been severed, that the information is no longer free flowing between our heads and our guts. So today on The Behaviorist, we're exploring the value of intuition and why it's helpful to have our intuition connected to our cognitive intelligence.
Welcome to The Behaviorist. This is a bonus episode with
Kedren Crosby
and Sarah Colantonio, and the topic, we're calling it Reconnecting to Your Intuition.
That's right.
Should we define what intuition is first?
Yeah, we can definitely do that. So basically what intuition is it's knowing without being fully conscious of how you know.
Okay.
So you just know it. And so people talk about, my gut says, I have a sense, I have a feeling that this is true.
Yeah. Okay. And why do you think this is so important to reconnect to intuition?
Well, in the last couple of weeks, we've been hearing quite a lot about businesses that are struggling in sort of sudden, unusual ways. People are not talking about the economy failing, but yet we're seeing it. Some of this might have to do with the election and the uncertain consumer behaviors with the election. So one of the reasons why it's helpful for business leaders to connect to their intuition is because it's a gold mine. So many of us as leaders, we operate solely on our cognitive intelligence and spreadsheets and objectives and KPIs and P&Ls. And there's this whole body of intelligence that we are not accessing, which is our intuition, which may be even more important than our cognitive intelligence. Now, at Work Wisdom, of course, we're interested in all the ways of knowing and evidence-based ways, as well as sort of ancient wisdom ways, and tapping into our intuition and connecting it with our cognitive intelligence is synergistically valuable.
So you're not advocating for ditching the cognitive. You're saying
let's connect it. Yeah. I think that, and I think that different people, depending on their family of origin and their education of origin, are encouraged to undervalue their intuition. So it sometimes takes experience. It sometimes takes being humbled or something that's surprising where you sense that you need to go to the left instead of to the right. You go to the left and it's rewarded, where you start realizing, this is valuable, and how can I start to connect it to the P&L, the KPIs, so that they're jet fuel for each other.
Well, you've come up with 10 ways to reconnect, and so I'd love to hear a little bit more about those.
Yeah. So the first thing I do want to say is everyone has intuition. So I don't believe that, there are these certain psychics or mediums that are endowed. I mean, maybe there are, but I think that every human being, every animal has instincts and intuition and can learn how to hone, develop, leverage, milk these intuitive skills. So these are my top 10 favorite ways of reconnecting our intuition, so that we can have greater value in our work lives, but really in any kind of achievement. The first one, I believe, is developing self-awareness. So this means gaining self-knowledge in a way that it integrates into your consciousness. So the knowledge is, okay, now I understand what my EQ skills or how I manage conflict or what my motivations are, my Enneagram home base. Maybe I even understand my cognitive distortions or my triggers. But it's more than just the knowledge of that. It's actually letting it seep into your awareness so that you are in the moment, seeing yourself, doing the thing, and you can then more gently choose a different behavior. So the first one is really gaining this self-awareness, because then you're more in touch with your gut. That second one that I strongly encourage our community to embrace is a daily practice of just checking in for clues. Our intuition is always trying to tell us things. It's trying to tell us which way to go or what not to do or what to do. And if we don't create a space and a time to nurture that, we'll miss out on those clues. So for some people, this might look like meditation. For others, it might look like a walk or journaling or the examine, a practice of just checking in with ourselves in a non-judgmental, curious way so that we can have that space there. And with time, we have some new neural pathways that are developed, and that practice every day becomes really even more fruitful because you're getting your messages from yourself, and but it does take some time to develop that.
Yeah, discipline. All right, explain this third one, which you call thin slicing. I'm curious about thin slicing.
Did you read Blink?
I did a long time ago.
Yeah, me too. So Malcolm Gladwell's book Blink, he talks about people who seem to be intuitives, and really they're not mediums or woo-woo in any way. They have developed so much expertise in a given area that they are able to make these very quick decisions and judgments, and people think it's far out. Yeah. But in fact, it's because they have their 10,000 hours in. So they have done whatever it is, playing tennis or looking at fake art or marriage counseling. They've done it so many times that they can meet somebody and know which couple is going to get divorced and which ones aren't. And it's really close to intuition. So, in fact, there are 4 kinds of intuition, and thin slicing really gets at the first kind of intuition. The first kind of intuition is called expert intuition, and that's where you have just so many reps, the 10,000 hours that you seem like an intuitive, but it's just that you've got so much experience, you can understand things without knowing how you're understanding them. The second kind of intuition is creative intuition, where you're just sensing a direction for some novel solution. The third kind of intuition is sensing what's happening in interpersonal relationships. Yeah, you probably have that. And then the fourth is temporal. So this has to do with sensing when is the timing right to create some new service line or to capture some opportunity. Something that I think a lot about is when is it time to sunset. So the temporal intuition has to do with getting the timing right. Yeah. So anyhow, but back to thin slicing. This is something that we hone through experience, that expert intuition, getting our 10,000 hours in, but also reflecting on what we've gleaned during those hours, and when our thin slicing and our intuition's been right on the money, and when it's been a little cattywampus, right? And so so that also helps grow our intuition. The fourth one I had on this list for our community of listeners is perspective taking. So I think we're checking in with our gut. We're connecting that gut to our brain in really robust and rich ways when we can see the relative importance of the decision that we're trying to make. So we do a practice called the helicopter exercise, where we encourage our clients to go up and up and up and up and up and up in a helicopter and then look down on their work lives. And that helps them to almost heat map, where's their energy, where's their positivity, what's a big deal, what's not a big deal. And so they can get the scale a little more accurate from that perspective taking. I think we can also do perspective taking in a temporal way, where we're thinking about time, and maybe even we're thinking about past and future people who are stakeholders with whatever the situation is. So I like to think back to, my ancestors and hundreds of years ago. What would they have thought about some situation? Or I love the indigenous practice of 7 generations out. What are 7 generations from now, assuming that Tommy and Teresa have children? What might they be thinking about some situation? The fifth practice I would love for people to start considering honing would be trusting yourself. So really getting that cable to be as wide as possible and as closely connected, our gut and our brain, getting them close to each other is reliant on trust. And I always go back to Francis Fry's work on trust and the trust triangle, and what we know about when we don't trust and when we do trust. And so going back to those 3 drivers of trust, are we authentic? Do we have solid judgment? Are we empathetic? And thinking about it with ourselves. So are we authentic and judge, and do we have solid logic, and are we empathetic with ourselves? And if we have a wobble in any of those 3 ways, how do we start to stabilize that with ourselves so we can truly trust our gut, and we can be much more confident and much more decisive when we have that inner authority. The 6th practice is really harnessing failure, which I alluded to with the thin slicing. But anytime there's a failure, thinking to yourself, sometimes I win and sometimes I learn. And what did I learn from this failure? And then thinking about it, postmorteming it from an intuitive perspective. So asking yourself, what did I pay too much attention to from my intuition? Or what did I not pay enough attention to? And what were the messages I maybe were trying to get through, but I wasn't paying attention to them. I had them blocked for some reason. Maybe I have a cognitive distortion that was blocking, or maybe there was a trigger, or maybe I just didn't make the time to pay attention to that. Harnessing that failure, I think, is important. A 7th practice is seeking out reality testers. In this article that I just wrote for Forbes about really elegant leadership and when to kill your darlings, I talk about having a wise counsel and surrounding yourself with people who are deeply wise. And I think reality testers are part of that. So reality testing is a skill in emotional intelligence, which means that you're able to read reality objectively. So you're not sugarcoating, you're not catastrophizing. And So I think in order to really hone our intuition, it's smart to take up the pulse on what our intuition is saying. Don't hire that guy. Do hire that guy. Start that product. Kill that service line. Whatever our gut is telling us. And then go to our wise counsel of reality testers and find out from them what their guts are saying. So if we sort of take the straw poll and we start to see over and over that we've got a bent, that we are always overly optimistic or we are always catastrophizing or whatever that is, we can start to recalibrate our intuition so that it's more accurate in the future, so that when we're feeding it to our brains and we're making business decisions, they're going to get us to higher performance. The eighth one is courage, and that's pretty simple, I think.
Simple but not easy.
Simple but not easy, yeah. The reality is fear kills intuition. Do you think that?
I think succumbing to fear.
Yeah.
That would be the way. I think fear is so natural. But if we succumb to it, I do believe it can kill intuition.
It can. And sometimes fear is constructive.
Yes.
And so we want to welcome it in and we want to invite it in for tea and we want to find out, why is this fear showing up? But sometimes we just need to face it or run into it. As Phil says in the tools, just scream and run into the fear. I think also we can start managing fear by microdosing it and microdosing uncertainty, microdosing fear, getting small doses of it. I think it's not surprising to me that so many people on the Work Wisdom team are musicians, because in music, you very often have to improv. Yeah. And so you're standing on a stage and somebody looks at you and you have to play a solo, at least in jazz. And I'm sure everything that Matt Ware does, and so you have to be comfortable with the uncertainty and you have to be able to trust yourself and you have to have the courage to just stay open to whatever unfolds. And I think so much of that is honing intuition. Yeah. And it's not that you're not using your brain. You know all the scales. You know when to play a B flat or not. The ninth practice is, maybe this one is simple but not easy also. I'm calling it make space.
Literally.
Yeah, I do think so. And this means that for our intuition to flourish and to start percolating and giving us cues and good data, there has to be space for it to grow. And some of the greatest threats to this tactic are our phones. Yeah. That we don't have boredom, we don't have time sitting on the bus to stare out the window. We're not at the doctor's office staring into space anymore. There's always something that can preoccupy us. But making space, those sort of open pastures for our gut to give us some cues, I think that's really key. So it might be, we just need to scale back on the phone and the social media. It might be overwork, because I think when we're overworking, we can't get in touch with our intuition. And that's a huge problem for leaders when they're working 70-hour weeks, but yet they want to have breakthroughs. Yeah. And so they're not going to, because they're not having those great ideas, because they're not in touch with their intuition. And then the last tactic that I'm suggesting for our listeners of The Behaviorist is to appeal to the better angels of our nature. So this is Abraham Lincoln, of course, but it's broad, but I believe that our intuition is more fruitful when we are living in a way that's rightly ordered. So that means that we are living in a way where we are grateful, and we are forgiving, and we are humble and open and loving, and as much as possible doing as little harm as we can to the planet, to the animals, to our partners, to our coworkers. So that's ourselves. To ourselves. Yeah. That's a really big bucket. Maybe you have a better name for that one.
I like it.
Appeal to our better angels. So that's sort of living that rightly ordered, I guess you could just say love, living in a loving way. So those are the 10 that I came up with for our clients, and I'm hoping that, as we've done before, a few months ago we had a podcast where we kind of had an emergency bonus podcast on vitality. Enough people were asking us for help on how do we get back to a sense of vitality. So we gave them 20 practices.
Yeah.
That must have been a long podcast, but today we're just giving you 10 practices so that you can start reconnecting to your intuition, knowing you have this intuition. It already exists. You just need to clear the clutter, make the space, pay attention to it, and start honing it. So the way we grow in anything is we choose 1 or 2 or 3 small tactics, and then we experiment with them. So I would encourage you to choose 1 or 2 or 3 of these. We'll include a PDF on the website so you can look at these 10 and start experimenting with them. And after you experiment with them, check in with yourself and maybe with others to find out how that went and get some feedback on how you can make it go even better. Sarah, is there anything that you wanted to reflect on?
I just appreciate the ability to tap into an untapped resource. We have this available to us, and we have this wisdom within us, and here are some really concrete ways to grow it.
Yeah. So, as is our custom on The Behaviorist, we're going to end with a 1-minute wisdom from Anthony DeMello. Do you know the one person who will never abandon you in the whole of your lifetime? No, who is it? You. And do you know the answer to every question you may have? No, what is it? You. And can you guess the solution to every one of your problems? I give up.
You.